I, 32F, never thought I would be writing something like this. My whole world changed last year when I lost my husband Trevor, 34M, in a horrible car accident. We met in college through mutual friends when I was 20 and he was 22. He was this incredibly talented musician who could light up any room. We dated for 4 years before getting married, and those 8 years of marriage were the happiest of my life. Trevor worked as a music teacher at the local high school and also gave private guitar lessons. Everyone loved him, his students, their parents, our neighbors, literally everyone he met. But his real passion was collecting vintage records and guitars. He started his collection when he was 15 with his first paycheck from a summer job. By the time of his death, he had over 300 rare vinyl records and 12 vintage guitars, including a 1969 Gibson Les Paul that was his pride and joy. We bought our house 5 years ago specifically because it had this perfect room that could be converted into his music room. Trevor spent weeks setting everything up, building custom shelves for the records, and installing special humidity control to protect the guitars. The collection was worth around $50,000, but to Trevor it was priceless. He knew the story behind every single piece. After Trevor died, I kept everything exactly as he left it. His coffee mug was still on the small table where he would sit and play. His notebook with song ideas was still open on the desk. Some people thought it wasn't healthy, but being in that room made me feel close to him. I would sit there for hours sometimes, just remembering how he would play his guitars and tell me stories about each record in his collection. My sister Candace, 35F, and my mom, 58F, were initially very supportive after Trevor's death. They would come over almost every day, bring food, help with housework, and just sit with me. Candace and I were always close growing up. We shared clothes, covered for each other with our parents, and told each other everything. She was my maid of honor at my wedding. My mom had always treated Trevor like her own son, and she seemed just as devastated as I was when he died. I was struggling with depression but trying to keep it together. I went back to my job as an accountant after the funeral because sitting at home only made things worse. My mom and sister had spare keys to my house because they would check on me regularly. I trusted them completely. 3 months ago, I was driving home from work when another car ran a red light and hit my side of the car. I had multiple fractures in my right leg and arm, and needed surgery to fix some internal bleeding. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, mostly heavily medicated for the pain. My mom and sister visited every day, bringing me things from home and telling me not to worry about anything. The day I got discharged, my best friend Lauren drove me home. I was using a wheelchair since I couldn't walk yet, and the first thing I wanted to do was go to Trevor's room. But when Lauren wheeled me in, the room was completely empty. Every shelf was bare. All the guitars were gone. Even the coffee mug and notebook were missing. I thought I was hallucinating from the pain medication. I called my mom in a panic, and she very calmly told me that she and Candace had sold everything while I was in the hospital. She said they had been wanting to do this for months because they thought I was living in the past and needed to move forward with life. They claimed they were trying to help me by removing painful reminders of Trevor. They sold the entire collection, 15 years of Trevor's life, for just $15,000 because they didn't bother researching the actual value. My mom said they were planning to give me the money to help with medical bills, as if that made it okay. The 1969 Gibson alone was worth more than what they got for everything combined. I completely lost it. I was screaming and crying so hard that Lauren had to call my doctor. How could they think they had the right to sell Trevor's belongings? These weren't just things, they were physical memories of my life with him. The guitar he played at our wedding, the first record he ever bought, the handwritten notes in his song notebook, all gone because they decided I needed to move on. When I told them I would press charges for theft, they acted shocked. My mom said I was being ungrateful since they were only trying to help me. Candace started crying about how much they loved me and how worried they were about my grief. They kept saying I couldn't press charges because they're family and had keys to the house. I blocked both their numbers and called a lawyer friend for advice. He said I had a strong case since they had no right to sell property that wasn't theirs, regardless of having keys to the house. When other family members found out, it caused a huge divide. My aunts and uncles are saying I'm overreacting and should be grateful for having such caring family members. My cousins understand my position and think what they did was unforgivable. My mom and sister are now telling everyone that I'm acting crazy and that Trevor wouldn't want me to treat family this way. But Trevor would be heartbroken if he knew his collection, something he spent half his life building, was sold off for a fraction of its worth by people who didn't understand what it meant to him. I don't think I can ever forgive them for this betrayal. They took advantage of me being hospitalized to do something they knew I would never agree to. They had no right to decide what I should keep or let go of while grieving. I've instructed my lawyer to move forward with legal action, and I never want to speak to either of them again. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I discovered what my mom and sister did, and things have gotten even worse. My lawyer, who specializes in property law, reviewed everything and confirmed I have a solid case against them. He said having spare keys doesn't give anyone the right to sell property they don't own, and the fact that they did it while I was incapacitated in the hospital makes it even more serious. When they received the legal notice, my mom and sister completely changed their tactics. Instead of apologizing, they started a smear campaign against me. Candace made this long, dramatic post on Facebook about how worried she was about my mental health. She claimed I was trapped in my grief and unable to move forward. The worst part was her lying about my doctor supposedly recommending they remove painful reminders from my house. She wrote about how I was obsessing over Trevor's belongings and that my doctor had expressed concern about my unhealthy attachment to his things. She even claimed the doctor had specifically suggested removing Trevor's collection during my recovery period. This was completely false. My doctor never said anything remotely like this. In fact, during my grief counseling sessions right after Trevor's death, my doctor had said it was perfectly normal to want to keep connections to lost loved ones. I had to contact my doctor and get him to write a formal statement confirming he never gave such advice. He was actually angry that they would use his name to justify what they did. Candace deleted her Facebook post after I threatened legal action for defamation, but the damage was already done. Several relatives had already seen it and shared it. Now I'm getting constant calls and messages from family members telling me I need professional help. My Aunt Lisa called me crying, saying she was worried I was having a mental breakdown. My Uncle Rob, who I've always been close to, suggested I should drop the charges and go to therapy instead. They all seem to believe Candace's version where she and Mom are the caring family members trying to help their unstable relative. But the situation got even more twisted when my cousin Rachel called me last weekend. She had noticed something odd at a family dinner she attended at Candace's house. My sister was wearing a distinctive watch that Rachel recognized. It was Trevor's grandfather's Rolex that had been passed down to him. This watch was incredibly special to Trevor. His grandfather gave it to him on his 16th birthday, a few months before passing away from cancer. Trevor treasured it and only wore it on special occasions. When Rachel casually asked Candace about the watch, my sister claimed Trevor had given it to her before he died because he knew how much she admired it. This was another complete lie. Trevor would never have given away his grandfather's watch, and besides, Candace had never shown any interest in it before. I asked Rachel to take pictures, which she did. When I confronted Candace about the watch, she first stuck to her story about Trevor giving it to her. But when I mentioned Rachel's photos and threatened to add theft of the watch to the police report, she finally admitted she had kept it for herself while selling everything else. This led me to wonder what else they might have kept, so I had my lawyer send a formal demand for them to disclose all items taken from my house. Under pressure, they finally admitted they hadn't sold everything. My mom had kept several valuable records she thought might be worth something, and Candace had not only the watch but also one of Trevor's rare guitars that she thought would look nice on her wall. I immediately filed a police report with all this evidence. When the police interviewed them, they tried to maintain they had done nothing wrong because their family had access to the house. But they couldn't explain why they kept certain valuable items for themselves if they were really just trying to help me move on from my grief. The fact that they not only sold Trevor's collection without permission but actually stole some of the most valuable pieces for themselves makes this betrayal even worse. It proves this wasn't about helping me. They saw an opportunity to take advantage of me while I was vulnerable and couldn't stop them. My sister returned the watch and guitar after the police got involved, but she's still insisting they did nothing wrong. She keeps saying things like family helps family and sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. My mom is now telling relatives that I'm tearing the family apart over just some old things and that I'm disrespecting her as my mother by involving the police. I don't care what anyone says anymore, I'm going forward with pressing charges. They violated my trust when I was at my most vulnerable, stole from me, lied about it, and then tried to make me look mentally unstable when I stood up for myself. The prosecutor is reviewing the case now, and I've made it clear I want to pursue this to the fullest extent possible. Update 2. The investigation into what my mom and sister did has revealed even more disturbing details that I'm still trying to process. The police obtained their phone records and text messages as part of the case, and what they found was shocking. This wasn't some spontaneous decision made while I was in the hospital, they had been planning this for months. The messages showed that Candace had started contacting music dealers 3 months before my accident. She had been sending photos of Trevor's collection to various buyers, trying to figure out how much they could get for everything. My mom was actively involved, messaging Candace about the best time to clean out that room and how they needed to wait for the right opportunity. They had already arranged a buyer weeks before my accident. When I ended up in the hospital, They texted each other about how this was perfect timing and they needed to act fast before I came home. There were messages about how they had to deal with the situation while I was out of the way. Reading these messages made me physically sick. They were literally waiting for a chance to get rid of everything, and my accident just happened to give them the perfect opportunity. The buyer they found was a dealer from a neighboring city. The police interviewed him, and he said Candace and Mom claimed they had power of attorney to sell my late husband's belongings. They told him I was mentally unwell and had asked them to clear out the house. The dealer said he offered more money initially, but they insisted on closing the deal quickly, which should have been a red flag. He admitted he knew the collection was worth much more than $15,000 but thought he was doing a favor for a family in distress. Some of Trevor's guitars, including his beloved Gibson Les Paul, have already been sold to collectors in different states. The dealer provided the sales records. That Gibson alone sold for $12,000, almost as much as what my mom and sister got for the entire collection. But the worst part was discovering what happened to the money. The police traced the bank records and found that only $8,000 of the $15,000 was left. My sister used $4,000 for a vacation to Miami last month, the same week I was trying to get the watch and guitar back from her. My mom spent $3,000 on new furniture for her house. They kept saying they were planning to give me the money for medical bills, but their actions show they were spending it freely. When confronted about the expenses, my mom claimed she was going to pay it back eventually, and Candace said she deserved the vacation because of all the stress I was causing her. They're still acting like they did nothing wrong. Candace even had the nerve to say that Trevor would have wanted her to enjoy life rather than let his things sit in a room gathering dust. The investigation also uncovered that they had gone through Trevor's personal documents in his desk. They found and took some savings bonds his grandparents had given him, claiming they thought these were just papers. The bonds were worth about $5,000. They hadn't even mentioned these until the police found evidence of them being cashed. Some of our relatives are finally starting to see the truth. My Aunt Lisa, who initially thought I was overreacting, called to apologize after seeing the evidence. She said she had no idea they had planned this so methodically. Even my Uncle Rob, who was defending them before, now admits what they did was calculated theft. The prosecutor says we have enough evidence for a strong criminal case. They're facing charges of grand theft and fraud. My mom keeps trying to send messages through other family members begging me to drop the charges, saying it will ruin Candace's career if she gets a criminal record. But I don't care anymore. They planned this for months, took advantage of my hospitalization, sold irreplaceable items for a fraction of their worth, kept valuable pieces for themselves, and then spent the money on vacations and furniture. I've started seeing a grief counselor to deal with all this, not because I'm unstable like they claimed, but because I need help processing this level of betrayal from my own family. The counselor says it's completely normal to be devastated by losing these connections to Trevor, especially in such a violating way. Update 3: The court case finally concluded last week, and I wanted to share how everything turned out. My mom and sister were both found guilty of grand theft and fraud. The judge was particularly harsh in his comments, saying they had systematically abused a position of trust while I was hospitalized and unable to protect my property. They were ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution to cover the actual value of Trevor's collection. The judge also granted my request for a permanent restraining order against both of them. They're not allowed to contact me directly or through other people, and they have to stay at least 500 feet away from my home and workplace. Instead of showing any real remorse, they're playing the victims. Candace lost her job at the bank when her employer found out about the conviction. Apparently having a theft record doesn't look good when you work with other people's money. She's telling everyone I destroyed her life over some old junk and that she'll never be able to get a good job again because of me. My mom had to take out a loan to pay her share of the restitution. She's been calling every family member crying about how she might have to sell her house to pay it back. She even tried to have my cousin Rachel guilt-trip me by saying she might not be able to help pay for my younger brother's college next year because of the restitution payments. The news of the conviction spread through our extended family and small community. Some relatives have completely cut contact with me, saying I went too far by pressing charges against my own mother and sister. Others have cut contact with them, disgusted by what they did. Family gatherings are now split into 2 separate events because we can't be in the same place. My sister's husband actually filed for divorce last month. He said he couldn't stay married to someone who would steal from their own family and then lie about it. Candace is blaming me for ruining her marriage too, even though her soon-to-be ex made it clear it was her actions and lack of remorse that ended their relationship. I used most of the restitution money to set up a music scholarship in Trevor's name at the high school where he taught. Every year, it will help a student who shows talent in music but can't afford instruments or lessons. The school is also naming their annual spring concert after him. It feels like a way to create something positive out of this whole mess. I've moved to a different city about 2 hours away for a fresh start. Some people might think I'm running away, but I couldn't stay in a place where I had to constantly worry about running into them or hearing what new lies they were spreading about me. My new home is smaller, but it's mine, and I'm slowly building new memories here. The hardest part is knowing that I'll never get Trevor's actual collection back. Those specific guitars he played, the records he spent years hunting down, his handwritten notes, they're gone forever. The money doesn't replace the sentimental value of what was lost. But at least there was some justice, and more importantly, they can't hurt me anymore. I still have the watch and guitar they tried to keep for themselves. Sometimes I sit and look at these two pieces that survived their raid, and I tell Trevor about everything that happened. I like to think he would be proud of me for standing up for myself, even against family. Some bridges, once burned, don't need to be rebuilt.